All right, we're just about finished with the permeability plugging test. It's been running for almost 30 minutes. We're waiting on the timer to tell us that the test procedure is over. I've got an interesting mix. I collected my filtrate at my spurt loss at 7.5 minutes, as dictated by the American Petroleum Institute. I've also collected filtrate at some other times that I didn't really record, didn't need to record, but it looks like I'm getting whole mud and through the filter. My filter medium is a 60 micron ceramic disc, so it probably is too porous to hold back the particles. So there's my 30-minute timer. So I'm going to collect the last bit of filtrate. Hopefully do this without getting in the way. I open my outlet valve and I collect until I can't collect anymore. There's really nothing else coming out the drain valve except, I'll close this back off, except a lot of whole mud. It looks like I've got about 16 milliliters of liquid. So my PPT value would be twice that. So it'll be 32 mils. So the first thing I want to do, which is standard with any high temp filter press, I want to seal off the cell. I do that by tightening my valve stem. Now the outlet part of the cell is sealed off. I cannot get any more fluid flow through the valve stem. On my receiver and CO2 pressuring assembly, I want to back off on the regulator. I do that by loosening the T-screw. By loosening the T-screw, I'm no longer injecting CO2 gas from my CO2 bulb. However, this is flexing the diaphragm back into a position which stops the gas flow, but theoretically I still have pressure on the other side of the diaphragm and into my receiver. So I release that by releasing the safety bleeder valve here. And I got nothing. But that's one thing you want to always check and make sure that you don't have gas that is trapped in there. So I'm going to close this off as an extra added seal against pressure coming out of the assembly. So just as a quick check, and one last thing to do is just double check, see if you collect any more filtrate. There is nothing there to collect. So I have released pressure here, I have released pressure here, and I have nothing coming out of here, so I can disassemble the top pressuring assembly or the back pressure assembly. So I remove my retainer pin lanyard. I can take my CO2 pressuring assembly off of my back pressure receiver, and then I'm freed up to remove the lanyard on the back pressure receiver, and I can remove this as well. Now mind you, I still have 1,000 psi inside the cell. So I want to open my drain valve on the hydraulic pressuring assembly. I want to release the pressure. So I do this by turning this clockwise. You see the handle fall, the gauge goes to 0. So now I have no more inlet pressure coming in to the unit. I still, however, have 1,000 psi in the cell. So I want to close the inlet ball valve. And now I can remove the hydraulic hose from the inlet valve stem on the cell. I no longer need the thermometer, so I will remove that. I do this by pulling down on it and simply removing it. So now I have a little bit of hydraulic fluid there, not much. So I have my cell that is basically still cooking because this heating jacket is still hot. I'm going to tighten this valve stem just to prevent any hydraulic fluid from coming out. I don't think that's going to be an issue, but it never hurts. So now I'm in the cool down stage. I want to remove the cell from the jacket, being careful not to burn myself because this cell is hot. It's always a good idea if you get oven mitts or some type of protection for your hands, because a lot of people get burned by dealing with these filter press cells that are hot. So I pick this up thusly, I take it over to my sink, and I simply run it underwater for a brief period of time. It doesn't take much, but the API says that this is not a good idea because you can burn yourself with the steam. Everybody does it. The other reason they say it's not a good idea is that it lowers, over a period of time, it lowers the tensile strength of the metal if you do a rapid cool down of the metal from high temperatures. I know of people that have been using high temp filter press cells for 30 years and they're still going strong. So I don't think that's really much of a valid argument as well. There's no reason to not do this that I can see. And like I say, everybody that I know of does it. These cells cool down real quickly. As a matter of fact, I can handhold the cell right now. Just a little tab that's been in here running in the cold water. So from here, I'm going to take it over to the vise, and you can put it back in. You can put it back in the heating jacket on the filter press, and seat it, and remove the cell cap. But then you got to, yank it out of the filter press, which is somewhat hard to do because it's heavy, to remove the mud and to remove your ceramic disc. So if you've got a vise handy, it is much easier to do. It's much easier to do with a vise. And you need a vise with a narrow neck so that you can put the cell in with the inlet valve assembly in place, and then clamp it down. You want to clamp it down pretty good. We have rubber grips on this vise so it won't damage the cell. All right, so now we're going to release the pressure on the cell, and it's a good idea to have a paper towel or rag or something over it, because a lot of times if there is a lot of pressure in here, it comes spurting out. And most laboratories, you can tell where they've been running high temp filter press tests by looking at the ceiling, because there is old mud and stuff on the ceiling. So I'm going to open this gently, which doesn't open the cell, but when I back off of this, this will. Okay, I heard a little bit of pressure there, but nothing is flying out. So I don't know if you could hear that, but there was just a little bit of release of pressure. So now, with our handy strap wrench, and with our strap wrench and spanner wrench, let's see if we can open this with, yeah, okay. So the fact that this is turning easily tells me that there is not pressure trapped inside the cell. If a nice feature of having threaded cell caps, if there is a lot of pressure, if there's 1,000 psi that was trapped in the cell that had not been released, I would not be able to unscrew this cell cap. Godzilla could not unscrew this cell cap if there was full pressure on there. So the fact that I'm able to turn it this easily tells me that Houston, we do not have a problem. So, and I think that's just about ready. Voila. So it looks like, I don't know if I'll be able to fish that out in place or not. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. Almost. All right, back to the sink. You have to just dig it out, coax it out, get it out every which way you can. This ceramic gets a very tight fit in here. And it is difficult to get it out sometimes. That guy. All right. We had, the reason we didn't collect more filtrate is filter cake broke up whenever I dumped it in the sink. But if you can see that, that's a pretty hefty filter cake. That's pretty thick filter cake, pretty thick, firm, rubbery. But nevertheless, if it's focused, if you can see that, that's maybe a little better. But that's a pretty stout filter cake. So this is not necessarily a good thing. It deposited a big, thick, fluffy filter cake, but it really didn't give us good filtration properties because whole mud went through the cake. Whole mud being this. This is not filtrate. This is whole mud. We at the same time ran another test on an API filter press using Wattman 50 paper with a 2.7 micron retention, and we did get filtrate using the same mud. We got about 15 milliliters of filtrate here. And with the permeability plugging tester operating with a 60 micron ceramic disc filter, we got 16 milliliters times 2, which is 32 millimeters. So, and this is whole mud and not filtrate like what we got. So this is the reason for running high temperature, high pressure filtration test. And it's also the reason for running different types of filters. You find out what type of filtration control you get, and as the permeability and porosity of formations differ, you get different amounts of filtrate collected or not, or whole mud collected, whatever the case may be. But again, this is what we got with the permeability plugging tester, and this is a lot of filter cake, and this is not necessarily a good thing because we got very little filtration control with this filter medium. So essentially, from here, we just do a cleanup. We clean up the filter press cell. We clean up the back pressure receiver. We clean up the whole assembly so that we're ready to go next time without having to do any cleanup. That's the best habit you can get into as far as laboratory testing. You want to completely clean up after yourself, after each test, so that you're ready to run the next test without having to do any cleaning up. So that is of paramount importance, and of equal importance when you finish your lab testing and you finish for the day. Unplug everything. Unplug your heating jacket from the wall. Unplug anything, particularly anything that has temperature or a temperature control. Retorts. Laboratories have burned down because people forgot to unplug a retort. And so if you get in the habit of unplugging all electrical devices before you leave the lab each day and or after each test, that's a good habit to get into. So, once again, this has been the permeability plugging tester, or permeability plugging apparatus, as manufactured and sold by OFI Testing Equipment. And as always, if you have any questions, comments, whatever, please do not hesitate to get in touch with us. So this is Larry Mitchell for OFI Testing Equipment, signing off for the permeability plugging test apparatus. Thank you very much.